Shut up and sit down.
Broome has become a mecca for the four-wheel drive brigade, who travel some 5,000 kilometres over bitumen to park on Cable Beach and watch the sunset over the water while celebrating their wisdom in buying a 4x4. For myself, I'm happy to just walk over the sand dunes to watch such a glorious sunset. In saying that, it's difficult not to draw similarities between this place and both Byron Bay and Darwin. Both Broome and Darwin have their strawberries and cream sandstone, an airport right in the middle of them, crocodiles and stinger-infested waters, and next to nothing anywhere near them. Both Broome and Byron Bay are feminine holiday destinations, as there are 3 beaches in town. 2 are nudist sections, 2 dog sections, and 2 four-wheel drive sections, and only 1 swim section. I don't think the ripples in the swim beach would satisfy many of the blokes, but the high accommodation costs in Broome would surely satisfy the demands of most women that the man prove the value of their love. The locals here are great, and like Byron Bay, I felt most comfortable on the dog section beaches. I would also expect a real competition between the locals here and those in Queensland on who's more proud of their town. We should teach these Western Australians how to play rugby league, just to realise the competition between them and the Queenslanders. A lot of the problems I've noticed in the Northern Territory with the Indigenous population still remain here. I was sort of hopeful that once crossing the border, the anger I found in the NT would return to the levels of Queensland. But here in Broome, the shops close before sunset and barricade themselves behind bars. The tourists gather on Cable Beach to watch the sunset, and the Indigenous people gather on the other side of the road to the police station at the Marimba community, which is now nothing but a vacant block. Also, like Byron Bay, many smaller service providers have sprung up in the local markets. I don't understand the attraction to such lo-fi chaos. The disorganisation of some stores with long queues and other stores with no customers at all. It's like people just assume that if others are waiting for a long time in the sun, it must be good. I don't think anyone here is doing much more than wandering around looking at other people wandering around, although I do appreciate that someone has finally found a good use for the local courthouse.
So tell me what's wrong with the feeling. I'm the flower, you're the bee. It's much older than you think. I'm in love, I'm in life. I belong to the stars and the sky. Let's forget who we are for one night. We're like animals, baby. It's the people that I want some real love, baby. Ooh, don't leave me waiting. I got real love, baby. Wait until you taste it. I got real love, baby. There's a world inside. We got the key. Just use it. Just before I'm in it. So tell me what's wrong with the feeling. I'm a cloud, you're the bee. It's much older than you be. I'm in love, I'm in fight. I belong to the stars and the sky. Let's forget who we are for one night. We're like animals, baby. It's the people that I want some real love, baby. Ooh, don't leave me waiting. I got real love, baby. Wait until you taste me. I got real love, baby. There's a way after all this time with just before I end, I'm real love, baby. Ooh, I'm gonna take you. I got real love, baby. Wait until you taste me. I got real love, baby. There's a world inside me.
Anyway, when I told Nicola that story, she said, oh, well, at least I know what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Initially I wanted to visit Wolf Creek Crater on the trip from Kununurra to Broome, but when I plugged it into Google Maps it estimated an 8-hour detour on top of an 11-hour trip, so that idea got cut. In hindsight it would have been a really good idea to have broken up the 1,050 kilometre trip into 2, staying overnight in Halls Creek, which would have enabled me to check out the crater and cut down the trip to Broome to about 8 hours. Doing the entire 11-hour trip in one hit left me so knocked out that it took the entire next day to physically recover. Waking up on sunrise, having breakfast and packing up the bike saw me leaving shortly after 7:30. Heading out on the road, I wanted to get a good start on what I expected to be a long day, but the weather was excellent and the road was long and straight. There were a couple of roadhouses in between the stretch to Halls Creek. There was rolling hills with enough grass to support cattle, and the road was rolling up and down with them. All was happy as Larry. After Halls Creek, there was a 290 kilometre flat boring void to the next service station at Fitzroy Crossing. The only interesting note was Muller's Ranges, which break up the otherwise tedious ride along the flat plains. I was hoping to get lunch at Fitzroy Crossing, as the map showed more shops there than anywhere else on the route. But once again arriving at my lunch stop shortly after 2:30, the only cafe looked shut and the service station was selling $7 meat pies. Moving on after downing a litre of sports drink, I was just out of town when I realised my wrists were getting sunburnt. I pulled over hoping I left the sunscreen in the backpack, only to find out that that was wishful thinking. Heading off into the baking sun with only 400 kilometres to go, with the sun right in my face, I had to slow down and use my hand to block the light from my eyes. Riding into the sun reminded me of the road to Weipa, but this time I was on bitumen and I didn't have to deal with the potholes or the corrugation. Finally reaching the Willowbridge Roadhouse just on sundown for the final fuel stop of the day, and after 10 hours of living on jelly snakes and sports drink, I was quite desperate for some real food. The only quick thing that I could buy was a $5 hot box. Basically the pile up of the deep fried food that hadn't sold during the course of the day. I could only eat half of it and I spent the next hour wanting to throw up. Thankful that the sun had set, even though that I'm now covered in bugs. Without the sun and closer to the coast, the temperature dropped remarkably. But by the end, I was just happy that I made Broome while only being an hour late. Broome looks to be one of the most expensive locations for temporary accommodation in Australia, behind the Flinders Ranges. Some of the rooms here are going for like $450 a night. I'm staying with a couple who have converted a large garage/boat shed into 3 separate spacious bedrooms with their own personal en-suites, but still share an outdoor kitchen and dining area. They must be pulling in an average of about $1,000 a night for this, and I don't understand why everyone in Broome isn't doing the same thing. A quick look on realestate.com and you can pick up a house here for a bit over $500,000. And if you spent another $100,000 making it suitable for Airbnb, you could pay off the whole thing in under about 5 years. With all these long straights, the rear tyre has squared off and is in real bad shape. I don't know how much longer it'll take before I start creating sparks on the road. Riding with squared off tyres makes the bike turn really weird. It wants to stay upright, then all of a sudden it turns sharply. Previously the front wheels went bad after about 15,000 kilometres and the rear wheel looked like it could have done about 25,000. I've only done about 10,000 kilometres on this set and the rear is totally gone. I don't think I can get another hop without risking a puncture in the middle of nowhere. After failing to organise the service in Darwin, I booked a service here in Broome and I've replaced the rear tyre with the new Michelin. I've organised a replacement for both tyres in Perth, some 3,000 kilometres away. That'll give me plenty of tread to do some burnouts along the way. Getting to Perth is more important than saving a few $100s in stretching out the current rear tyre and risking the likely thousands of dollars it'll cost to get someone to pick me up from the middle of nowhere. The new rear tyre has made such a huge difference, and with the fresh oil the bike is riding somewhat more like new. The gear change is still rough and I'm missing some of the horses with the ding in the muffler, but I'm still confident that the bike will get me all the way back to the east coast. Vodafone and NBN are all good. Starlink has again crept northwards, but is still about 150 kilometres short of the stop at Carnarvon, meaning that since the last time I was in Starlink service at Noosa, they've only moved up about 300 kilometres on the west coast, but have increased over 1,000 kilometres on the east coast and are now serving Townsville. Once in Geraldton, I'll be able to find out if the dish has survived being lugged over the top end. At over 5,000 kilometres, Broome marks the furthest distance from home. From now on, every hop should pull that amount down. Crossing the top end has been very difficult. The long straight stretches of road with nothing but rest stops and 100 kilometres in between service stations, and those mind-numbing roads haven't yet finished. I have one more stop in the tropical regions and then the weather should start cooling back down. I think I've only had the last 3 stops in Weipa where the weather has been warm enough not to sleep with the doona. Although it's been warmer than Sydney, this trip hasn't been the endless summer I was hoping for. In retrospection, it may have been easier just to stay in Cairns for 3 months than just fly over to the west coast. I've built my path through to Adelaide, which should see me cross to Nullarbor in some 2,000 kilometre stretch in 2 days. And after that, it should see me return back to the East Coast bubble. Once in the Flinders Ranges, I should return to the joy of having petrol every 20 kilometres and food that is cooked on demand rather than deep fried hours earlier. I think the stress of crossing the top end is subsiding, and the worries about whether I'd make it across on a motorcycle are dissipating. Next stop is Point Sampson, which is just beyond Port Hedland. Hopefully coming down the west coast I should have more time and things to explore. So thanks for following my adventures around Australia. Remember to go out there and do something to enjoy your day.